marching to the palaces of the high and mighty. I, the Lord, have dedicated these soldiers for this task. Yes, I have called mighty warriors to express my anger. Yes, I have called mighty warriors to express my anger. And they will rejoice when I am exalted.
Hello, happy Good News Friday. Katherine Albrecht here. This is the Dr. Katherine Albrecht Show as we're heading into a 3-day weekend. Labor Day weekend, of course, kind of signals the end of summer, the beginning of fall. I'm going to look at the upside. I'm going to look at the good side, the leaves and the cool and the crisp and the apples and all the good things that come with fall. And I'm not going to mourn the passing of summer. I've got a lot of exciting things in the works, and it's been a wonderful summer. But I'm ready to really drill down to the next stage of everything I'm working on. As I have mentioned many times, I am finished with my studio. It's working great, and I'm delighted to be here, delighted to be broadcasting from the studio, and we will begin live streaming. Pretty sure we're going to be able to do that next week. So I'm learning to use all the equipment, learning how to click all the buttons and bring things up. And what's amazing these days is in 2025, we no longer need expensive video producers. We don't need a flurry of people to come in and do all of the technical things that used to be done. And how far we've come. I remember I was 9 or 10 years old at the California Museum of Science and Industry in Los Angeles when I first saw myself on camera. I love that science museum. They always had the cool new exhibits and the latest technology. And they had set up an exhibit. My friends and I would go there. This lets you know how the 1970s were. Our parents, actually my mom would go around and pick up all my friends, drop us off at the Science Museum. We wouldn't even go inside. She'd leave me with some cash to pay the entrance fee, drop us off, because it was hard to find parking there in downtown Los Angeles, and then we would just head on into the museum. And that museum complex right across the street from USC, where I later was an undergraduate in college, that museum complex had the Museum of Natural History, which we would probably call the Plant and Animal History Museum. And it had the Museum of Science and Industry. And now it also has an aerospace museum, and I believe it has a museum of African American history. I'm not quite sure. That got built after I no longer lived there. But in any event, she would drop us off. It would be myself and 2 or 3 friends from school that were also in my Girl Scout troop. And we would spend the day there. And we spent many, many Saturdays going to these museums, going from one to the other, on our own. 9, 10 years old, nobody thought anything of it. It was the most natural thing in the world. And I always felt safe in those museums. I really, even though this is downtown Los Angeles, and later when I was a student there at USC, I recognized that that's not the best part of LA, but those museums were amazing. And so in one of those museums, my favorite part of the Science Museum of Science and Industry, we went in just like every other time we'd gone in, and they'd usually have some little cool exhibit, but this time they had something astonishing. And the astonishing thing is that as we walked in, there was a screen, and on that screen, to my utter astonishment, was us. So that was the very, very first time that, and there were no video cameras. There were no handheld Betamax or VHS cameras at that point. There was no ability to record a television program and watch it later. The average person had no ability whatsoever to do anything with moving pictures. We had, Polaroid cameras, and we had cameras with, the whatever millimeter film that you had to put in the little 12 and 24 packs and get them developed. But that's about all we had, little portable cameras to take snapshots. And this notion that I could actually, we felt like movie stars. There we were on the camera. There we were. And, we'd wave our arm and we'd see the picture of us waving their arm. And fast forward from the time I was 10 years old to now, and here I am. I'm actually controlling all of the same equipment, and much more powerfully so. I've got in this studio, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I've got 4 cameras in here. I have 6 very bright lights. I have 2 clip-on microphones. I have this big boom microphone right here, and 2 computers, 2 monitors, keyboards, mice, the things that didn't even exist then. There were no personal computers. There were no mice and keyboards. It's truly an astonishing thing. And the book that I'm writing, as listeners know, I won't say I'm an enemy of technology because that would not be accurate. I won't say I'm a friend of technology because that wouldn't be accurate either. I've always had a fascination with technology. When I was a graduate student, as I've explained previously, I almost got my PhD from MIT in something called Science, Technology, and Society, the STS program there. I took courses at the Media Lab at MIT. I was one of the early adopters of, the internet, this WWW thing that came out when I was a graduate student. And I hung out with that techie crowd. Those were kind of my people. I was sort of in the STEM half of my graduate program, and not even half, the little tiny, tiny number of us that were very much into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math issues. And so it was a very natural thing for me to be in that environment. I had tutored my way through college, tutoring math and science. I had taught middle school physical science and algebra, and really thought that my life was going to go in a technological direction. And the reason that I wound up going to Harvard to get my master's degree at that time, my master's degree is in something called, let me see what it is. Can't even remember the name of the specialty that I got for my master's. I don't know, something math and science. Can't remember. I'll remember. But when you go in my program, this is the Graduate School of Education at Harvard, we had to pick a specialty. So some people chose to specialize in, research of education. Other people chose, to actually receive a teaching degree. Some of us chose to do research. Some of us chose. So we all kind of had to pick our little specialty, and we didn't do that until we got there. And the one I picked was actually using technology for education. And so I learned to program educational software and, was up on the latest things, which back then, if you can believe it, I'm going to date myself here, but it was actually video discs. We had gone from computers where you put in the little floppy disk, the 3.5-inch floppies, and then first the 5-inch floppies, I guess, and then the little 3.5-inch floppies, to the point where they actually had come out with video discs. They were like CDs, but they were big, like platter-sized CDs. And we had these state-of-the-art, I think they were only, society only really used those for probably two or 3 years. It didn't really catch on. But we had this state-of-the-art, super expensive equipment, and we were taught how to program, how to actually create educational software. So I had a program, I think one of them was a sample Myers Briggs temperament instrument. So it was a personality test, and I created the questions. And as you answered certain questions, it would take you off into other directions and ask further things to drill down more. And so I programmed all of that, and they pressed it onto these big video discs. And that was what I thought my future was going to be. I thought I was going to be designing educational software and working in that field. So I give you that background to say that my aversion, if you want to call it that, my concerns, my worry about technology does not stem from an inherent bias that I have. In fact, if anything, I was the opposite. I remember thinking at that time, you other guys, you don't know about this internet thing. You don't know about these chat rooms, and you don't know about all of this online communication. And I actually wrote my qualifying paper at Harvard on computer-mediated communication. And I remember feeling just very cutting edge and avant-garde, like I was on the bleeding edge. I hate that term, but I felt like that, like I was in the vanguard and everybody else was miles behind me. And fast forward, of course, it was while I was at Harvard that I stumbled upon that meeting that led to the creation of RFID, when they were discussing putting microchips on everything and using them to tag and track people. And I think it was at that point I began to say, wait a minute. And the Lord did some work in my heart, and now here I am. And it's probably a really good thing. I've got all this technology, and what the enemy intended for evil, God's using for good. All right, say more about that when we come back.
Why are most email programs free? Companies use them as bait to lure people into their system so they can scan their data and sell them to advertisers. It's like a hotel giving out free room.
Hey, Catherine, you there?
I am, and we're streaming, so your voice is going to stream out. Yeah. You want me to call you? All right, let me do that. Yeah, go ahead and do that. I think I have it on Do Not Disturb, but I'll fix it. Be right back. Shine forth from your throne of dazzling light in the sight of my enemies. Stir up your mighty power in full display. Stir up your mighty power, oh God, we pray. Come back, oh God of Israel. Come back, command your angel armies. Okay, I'm back. Let's see if I can get my volume up just a little dot there. That's what that call was about. All right. Hopefully that's, you can let me know if it's not Jack. We're still trying to work out all the equipment, and here I am just in charge of all of it. I feel like I'm sitting in a catbird seat with all the cameras and the microphones and the volume buttons and all the transmissions. Super cool. Super awesome. So what I had been saying is that as I'm sitting here surrounded by thousands of dollars of technology that back then, when that science museum, back then, I'm sure it probably cost thousands and thousands of dollars to just put up that one exhibit. And now here we are. We're streaming through the internet. The internet didn't exist yet. We are, I'm transmitting my voice across those airwaves. And I suppose it was possible to do radio, but it's very different nowadays than it was then. So just amazing how far this has come. So when I think about the book I'm writing, and longtime listeners know that I I have become convinced that this technological endeavor that humankind has done that's going to lead to our extinction as a species was a spiritual decision on the part of Adam and Eve to choose power, to eat the fruit, have the powers of God through knowledge. That knowledge that has given us the powers of God, of course, is technology. And here we are. We can create life, I suppose, kind of, in a test tube. I don't think we're ever actually going to be able to create life, even though scientists are really trying. Hasn't happened yet, and I don't think it ever will. But we have modified the processes of life. We have genetically modified life. We have redesigned life. We're able to create glow-in-the-dark petunias. You can actually buy those online. We are able to create, glow-in-the-dark rabbits and, fish with scales or fish with fat. I don't know, all kinds of yucky stuff through CRISPR. That's one of the powers of God. We have the power to destroy entire civilizations through nuclear weaponry. We have a lot of power. But, the downside to that, or the flip side, is that God said, if you do that, you'll surely die. And he didn't mean Adam and Eve were going to kill over dead like eating cyanide. He meant that their descendants, us, would surely die as a result of that trade-off of choosing these technologies, which give us great gifts with one hand and stab us in the back with the other, as C.P. Snow, I think I used to call him a New York Times writer, but I've since, doing research for my book, found out he's a parliamentarian, or was a parliamentarian in England. But that's his famous quote. We opened the book Spy Chips about RFID that I co-authored with Liz McIntyre years ago. We opened the book with that quote, actually, that technology is a queer thing, gives you great gifts with one hand, and it stabs you in the back with the other. And that's by design. I mean, that's really, when we talk about the knowledge, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, well, the devil promised Eve, you will have the powers of God. No, we'll surely die. No. God doesn't mean that. He just doesn't want you to have his power. But if you eat this fruit, you'll know everything. Your eyes will be opened, and you will have the knowledge, and you will have the powers of God. And of course, he has been feeding humanity that dark knowledge that came from that tree ever since. That's it, where it all comes from. So these may sound like fairly outlandish claims when you first hear them, but I promise that I lay out a pretty convincing case in my book, step by step. You don't have to agree with it, but there's not much in there that I don't back up, either with research or scripture or examples. And it's pretty shocking when you put it all together. And it is a very coherent worldview, and it explains an awful lot. Like, why is it that every technology we come up with has tremendous benefits? That's the knowledge of good. That's the good part. And yet it turns around and has tremendous fallout. The damage to our health, the damage to our environment, the damage to our relationships, to our culture, the damage that implementing all of these incredibly beneficial technologies has is enormous. And in the book of Genesis, of course, we know that when Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery in Egypt, he's the Joseph of the many-colored coat. His brothers threw him in a pit and put blood all over his multicolored robe, and then took it back to their father and said, "Now he was eaten by wild animals. Oh, sorry, bummer." And then, of course, they sold him into slavery in Egypt, and he became the second most important person in the entire nation of Egypt, and was able to rescue his family when there was a famine. He was in charge of all the food in Egypt, and he provided for his family, and they survived. So years later, when they went sort of hat in hand begging for food to Egypt, and they were led into the room with Joseph, who they didn't recognize, it was years later, and he's wearing his royal garments and being surrounded by slaves, and just treated like royalty, because he was royalty. They didn't know who he was, and I'm sure they were expecting him to speak to them in Egyptian, but instead he spoke to them in their own language. And as they realized who he was, with absolute horror, they fell back in terror that he was going to take revenge on them for what they had done to him. And instead he said, don't blame yourselves for what you did. God has used what you intended for evil for good. And through this, he will save our family. And that led to, of course, the nation of Israel. And I feel the same way that all of these different technologies that I believe the enemy absolutely intended for evil, God will turn them to good. So think about the technologies I'm using. So right now I'm using the internet to connect to the radio station, to KHNC. And that internet has been used to transmit unspeakable amounts of filth. There is more. I would venture there is more pornography transmitted through today's internet than the entire history of the human race up until its creation in just one day. I'm guessing that. It's flowing through the air too. Wi-Fi and all of these signals around us. If we could see them, if we could see the contents that are floating by our heads, if that digital data could take visual form and we could see it, we would be swimming in I'm just picturing floor to ceiling, every square inch around me being covered in filth. Just awful, monstrous images of filth, horror movies and pornography and vanity and degradation and corruption and filth. And so that has vastly accelerated the enemy's plan to corrupt the human race, corrupt the human species, corrupt mankind. In the past, if you think about, 1700s, 1800s, Little House on the Prairie is always my example. But for Charles Ingalls, that's Laura Ingalls Wilder's father, there we go. For him to become corrupted with pornography would have been pretty challenging. It would have been tough. There wasn't really a way to do that in the on the frontier of North Dakota or wherever they lived. That was impossible. If he wanted to even see those sorts of things, he would have to get on a horse, travel to a distant location. Even when he went to the store to get certain things, he would be gone for, days or even weeks, and have to fend off wild animals and snowstorms and other things to even get back. And it's not as though there was a way for the enemy to just drop pornography into his life. It just wasn't going to happen. So for many millennia, really, the only place that people could become corrupted in those ways was in the big cities. So the majority of people who did not live in those big cities, even the people who didn't really encounter that, necessarily, unless they lived in a really corrupt place. But, for the enemy, I'm sure that was very frustrating for Satan to say, how in the world am I going to get my filth? How in the world am I going to fill the world with disgusting stuff? How am I going to get that into the heads of not only Pa Ingalls, but into, Ma's head? How am I going to corrupt, Laura and her sister Mary and their little sister Carrie? What do I need to, there's no way to do it. There really wasn't. And you could put, humankind has always been subject to little petty jealousies and the thieving and corrupt thoughts, but that's not quite the same as surrounding yourself with abject filth or watching movies about witchcraft. Or there was one guy who he looked up some awful biblical deity that, not deity, he wasn't a deity, like an idol from the Old Testament, and it was mentioned on some TV show he was watching on Netflix. And he went on AI, ChatGPT, and typed it in and said, "What is this thing?" And the next thing he knew, and I've read the transcript of this. The next thing he knew, ChatGPT was telling him how to honor and worship this idol, how to actually do a blood sacrifice to this idol, and was even offering him a script for how to renounce God and just set himself free from the tyranny of God and Christianity, and was going to write him. Actually offered, because I guess it does that nowadays. It says, "Would you like me to write the breakup letter for your husband? Would you like me to write the suicide note for your parents? Would you like me to write the ceremony that you can commit to renounce Jesus Christ and accept Satan as your Lord and Master?" It literally was asking him to do that. And why? Because he saw it on Netflix. Pa wasn't going to be running across some ancient Babylonian deity and within an hour be given instructions how to worship it. Yeah, that's where we're at today. All right, stay tuned. I'll be right back.
Is your email box?
Place. All are from the dust, and to the story turn. To the story turn.
It's beautiful. Katherine Albrecht here. So, to dust we return in a way, But there's something beyond this mortal coil. Is it Shakespeare? I think referred to our physical bodies as this mortal coil. Somebody can correct me. Let me know who said that. I think it was Shakespeare. But there's more to us. There is something eternal, something basic, something intrinsic that goes beyond our bodies, goes beyond this physical realm of, 3D space and things we can touch and smell and hear, goes beyond the 60, 70, 80, 90-year lifespan that we have here. There's something eternal to a human being. And I was having a conversation about this with a friend earlier today, about the spiritual component. Actually, it was Ray. Hi, Ray, if you're out there. Ray and I were talking about the spiritual component of people, and I realized something, that when I was probably 20, 21, I had just graduated from undergrad. I went to USC, as I mentioned, across the street from the Science Museum, and I had the degree I got. I changed majors many times. I was political science. I thought I was going to be the next governor of California. That was my plan. I'm so glad I didn't. But, I ran for student body president, and I was, in the community college association, going up to Sacramento and, lobbying for laws and doing lots of stuff. So I thought I was going to be a poli-sci major, and realized there weren't any jobs for poli-sci majors. That's a good major for people who want to go on to become lawyers, I guess. But in and of itself, a 4-year degree in political science isn't worth too much. And at that time, in the 1980s, the big thing, of course, was to go into business. If anyone old enough to remember, all the great jobs that your fellow students were getting when they graduated were these incredible, being stockbrokers and making 6 figures right out of undergrad. And we were all just blown away, like, that's where it's at. It's business. So I switched to a business major and hated it. Absolutely hated it. I should have gone into the entrepreneur program, but I was so intimidated by those entrepreneurs. They were like they were like gods to me. They were just these amazing, incredibly talented people. And so instead, I got my degree in international marketing because it was the only thing I could find that was creative enough to survive business school. As I'm going to all these accounting classes and finance classes and having to read the stock market reports in the Wall Street Journal and just finding it out of my mind boring. I would actually write poetry sitting in my accounting classes. I remember I had a finance class with probably 300 students, and it was this big, huge auditorium. And I would just sit there and write poetry thinking, why am I here? But I got my degree and went for the interviews. And at USC at that time, I think they still do this. They have these career fairs where, as you get close to graduating, they set up all these tables out in the quad, and each table has a particular company, and they've got their logo there, and you can go up and talk to them. And if you want to have a job for, some whoever, whatever field, you approach them and you have a conversation, you give them your contact information, which back then was not email because we didn't have that yet. It was literally a landline telephone number and an address. That's what we exchanged back then. And a lot of people got jobs that way. Well, when I graduated and it came time to get a job, I wound up, I've told this story before in the air, but I wound up getting the coveted interview with Quaker Oats. And the job I would have gotten was being a sales rep for Gatorade. Yes, I don't know if Gatorade is still made by Quaker Oats, but it was then. And so here I am with my degree in marketing. And I did a really good interview because I had prepped and I had practiced. And as you can probably tell, I like public speaking, so I did okay. And I got called back for the second interview, and I got called back for the third and final interview. And I know they were about to offer me that job, and I didn't want it. The person interviewing me said, I have just one more question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I knew the right answer to that to get the job. The right answer would have been, well, I love Gatorade. It's so exciting to rep your Gatorade. It's going to be great. And I hope to, in 5 years, go from, an entry-level job where I'm going store to store and trying to convince supermarket owners to expand the amount of shelf space for Gatorade. And that actually is what people do. You go out and you're like, you only have this much shelf space. How about if we do this? Or how about you set up this display? And I said, and if I, so my dream here would be to be a regional rep for Gatorade and have people working under me repping Gatorade. And I wouldn't just be me. It would be, me heading up a division of Gatorade reps. That was the answer they wanted. And I knew the answer. And if I'd given that answer, I would have absolutely gotten that job. But instead, I gave the true answer. I said, and, at this moment, I've told this story before. I was in downtown Los Angeles. I was on probably the, 23rd floor of some high rise. And as I'm sitting there talking to her in my suit, I was all coiffed and ready for my interview. And I looked around and I thought, the only thought that came in my head, these windows don't even open. And that was all I could think about. She's talking and I'm just looking at her going, the windows don't even open. The windows don't even open. And of course, windows in a high rise aren't going to open. People would jump out, I guess. I don't know. So, they've got air conditioning, they've got heating, they've got climate control. Why do you need the windows to open? But to me, at that moment, I think the symbolism of being in a building with windows that did not open symbolized to me being just trapped in a meaningless, absolutely pointless, meaningless job that would have no purpose. And, is that how I want to spend my life, is climbing the corporate ladder? And now I'm not only, repping Gatorade, but I'm repping a whole sales division of consumer products. And I've got a whole bunch of people working under me. And I'm, in charge of the entire western region of the United States for Quaker Oats products. I mean, and I know a lot of people do that. I think for me, though, I wanted to have meaning in the work I was doing. I could not imagine I just couldn't imagine having my real meaning, my real self, the real thing I cared about, having to happen in the hours that were not the 40 hours a week that I was doing my job. Now, maybe there are people out there, and let me know if this is you, because I don't mean to presume. There may be people out there who derive a huge amount of personal, meaning and, really get something out of that. It's just not me. So I know a lot of people, they work to live. They live to work. Well, you try to not live to work, but there are a lot of people who work to live, going through the motions just to collect the paychecks so that in the off hours, when you finally get off work, then you can actually come to life and have your life. You live on the weekends. You live in your, 2 short weeks of vacation, or, you live in the evenings. But I didn't want that. So after that interview, and I got to tell you what I told her. I knew I didn't want the job. And I said to her, can I be honest? She said, yeah, absolutely, sure. And I said, well, I see myself going back to graduate school, getting a degree in teaching. And she just went like, because we both knew that was the wrong answer. That was the wrong answer to get that job. And she was a little flustered, and she said, well, that's, very interesting. Well, we'll be in touch with you. Thank you so much for coming in. And I knew that was it. And I, of course, later got the phone call that I hadn't gotten the job. And I was like, woohoo. But then my next, I actually drove home that day from Los Angeles, and my mom, just my wonderful, understanding mom, saw me, and I just burst into tears. She said, how'd the interview go? And I said, I don't even want the job. What am I doing? I have this awful degree. I hate it. My life is ruined. I have this degree in business, and I don't want to do it. And so she called, this is how I got started with the Myers Briggs, the MBTI temperament instrument that I've talked about so much on the air. She found a Myers Briggs career counselor, had this woman, Linda Powell. I don't know if she's probably not around at this point. This was years and years ago. Linda Powell came to our house and gave me, she had all these, came with all this briefcases full of books and stuff, and gave me the test, and I took the Myers Briggs. It's the MBTI Myers Briggs temperament instrument. Never heard of it before. Took the test. No idea. I'm just answering the questions. And when I was done, she scored it, and she handed me a book open to a certain page. And I read for the first time my own temperament, and I burst into tears. I just started crying and I said, "You mean it's okay to be the way I am?" Because up until that point, and I think many people live their whole lives this way, and if this is you, I encourage you to rethink it. Up until that point, I always thought there was something wrong with me, that I just needed to buckle down. And the only reason I didn't like my accounting classes and didn't enjoy doing the homework and sometimes didn't even do it was because I was just lazy, or I just wasn't working hard enough. And I came to realize that through that description that that's not me. So anyway, I have a reason that I'm telling you about Linda Powell, and I'll tell you about it on the other end of the break. She actually challenged me with something that at the age of 20 or 21, however old I was, couldn't see it, but I see it now. I'll tell you what it is when we come back. Stay tuned.
I've been hearing a lot about the LifeWave patches, and they sound amazing. And I'm thinking I want to try them for myself. But can you
love your enemies, take care of the least of these? Have we forgotten that's how we change the world? Weep with those who weep, compassion and empathy. Have we forgotten that's how we change the world? Have we forgotten that's how we change the world?
Hey, I'm back. Katherine Albrecht here. All right. So as promised, I'm going to tell you what Linda Powell challenged me with and what Ray and I were talking about today. So here I am in 2021. I am devastated because I think I've got the wrong degree and I'm never going to have a good life and I'm going to wind up doing work I hate. And for the first time, I read this profile. My profile, I think it's like 3 or 4% of women have my temperament. Other women can be up to 16%. So it was very reassuring to say, okay, you mean this odd way that I was designed is okay? And it's taken many decades, but I've now realized that God designs each of us with our unique skills so we can be in an ideal world, we can be sharpened tools in his hand, and he can use the gifts and talents he's given us to put us in the right place to just be the right person to do the right thing at that moment. And, so hasn't made a whole lot of people, one out of 33 women, he's made this way. And I used to hate that. And now I think it's pretty cool because I love the work he's giving me to do. And I couldn't do it if I were any other way or made any differently. But here's the thing that Linda Powell told me that blew my mind. So we went through all the things about temperament. Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Are you a person more interested in ideas and logic and thought? Are you more interested in people and human relationships? Are you more interested in concrete details and manipulating the physical world in your life? Or are you more interested in the intellectual, just all those sorts of things? Are you on time? Are you late? Are you organized, disorganized? And there is no right or wrong, by the way, in that. It was so liberating because so often we're told, be this one certain way is the only way to be, you got to be extroverted, you got to be super organized, you got to be really, and it's the Myers Briggs is great because it has no downsides. If you're one of the people who's not super organized, well, you have this incredible gifting of being spontaneous and able to respond to changes quickly and not being stuck in the mud. Not the mud, but stuck in your ways. So the upside is you're super organized. The downside is you can be kind of slow to adapt to new things or respond in a crisis. So it's all good. It's all good. It all works out. But the one thing she told me that I was like, I don't get it, was when she sat down and she showed this diagram that she had in her book, and it was about the things that make up a person. And there was the body, and I was like, oh yeah. And there was the mind. I was like, yeah, absolutely. There was the spirit. I was like, And then there was the soul. The spirit and the soul. This I don't even know that she made them separate, but she talked about this sort of ephemeral spiritual aspect of a human being. And right now, I can't imagine ever not knowing that. But at that time, I not only didn't know it, I thought she was out of her mind. I really thought that she was crazy. Here I am, I'm 21. I've just graduated magna cum laude with my business degree. Got the world at my feet. The world felt like my oyster. And here she was trying to tell me this thing about, the spiritual aspect of life, and I didn't see it. And the reason I'm saying that to you today is because it's so easy, especially when you're older, you figured things out. I assume listeners to this radio broadcast are, for the most part, people who figure things out that those around us don't. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't like my show. So I think we're, kind of birds of a feather here in that we look beyond the obvious. We look beyond what society palms off as the truth or what's important, and we see a different thing, a deeper thing. It could be a trap. Let me just say this. We can fall into a trap of looking down on people who don't do that, right? The sheeple, right? There's a lot of phrases for them. The sheeple, bad, they don't, those people over there. Or like you go to the grocery store and you fill your cart with healthy food, hopefully. And there's a tendency to look at the person behind you who is 100 pounds overweight and looks really unhealthy. And you look in their cart and you see all this awful stuff and you're like, yeah, well, no wonder you're the way you are. There can be a tendency when you know things other people around you don't know to look down on them. And I needed that wake-up call, literally today on the phone with Ray. I needed that wake-up call to go, there's a lot of people who don't know that there's a spiritual element to the things we're dealing with in society today. And I can't look down on them because that was me. I mean, I was that person. The people who you see in that state of ignorance, we were once in that state of ignorance about a whole lot of things. And they, with help of the Holy Spirit, help of proper information, help of maturity, help of things I think the Lord gives to each of us to kind of guide us along the path, they can wind up right where we are. They can wind up knowing these things as well. So don't look down on people. And I think I did talk about this on another show. I don't think I went into enough detail, but I think about, I I've tried to get a different mindset that instead of, here we are and we know, and there's them and, instead of that mindset, to really see us, it's kind of similar to what I was saying about this isn't our world. We are the rescue crew. We are the firefighters who are going into the burning building and rescuing the other people who are in there, because this is their world and it's burning down, and we have to get them out of there and into a safer place. So that is the role of the church in this time. That's who we are. We're the rescue crew. This is not our world. This is not our world that's burning down. We have a new world to look forward to. And if you think about other people in that way, not as people to be looked down upon, but as people to be helped, as victims in a burning building who are burning down, that's who we are. We're not to look down on people. We are more mature and further along the path in there, but no more so than, a mother is further along the path than, a kid. We're further along the path, but that doesn't mean we're superior in any way. We've just had more time to figure it out. So when I think about the people out there who need our help, and on yesterday's show, I talked about the kid who committed suicide, the 16-year-old who, spent thousands of hours talking to ChatGPT and then took his own life. And also that 22-year-old young man who shot up a school and shot up a church and full of kids and then took his own life. There's a tendency, once again, to go, oh, those guys, and look down on people. But if instead of that attitude, we had the attitude of, the picture I had in my head was of a parking lot. We have a parking lot that's right here by the river. And I just picture toddlers, kids, ages maybe 2 to 5. That wouldn't be toddlers, but, toddlers and young kids wandering around that parking lot. And maybe even 6 months old, crawling around. And what are they going to do? They're going to pick up the first cigarette butt they see and stick it in their mouth, right? They're going to go over to the very edge of the parking lot where there's a guardrail, and they could probably slip under it and fall into the river and drown. And that is really what our neighbors, our fellow human beings on this planet who haven't figured it out, that's them. They're in a parking lot picking up the cigarettes, sticking them in their mouths. They're wandering over to the edge. They're crawling out into traffic. They're doing things out of ignorance because they don't know better. They're not doing them because they want to. A kid doesn't fall into the river because he wants to drown. He falls into the river because he doesn't see the danger there, and there's no one helping him. There's no parent helping him know where the guardrail is. So our role in the lives of the young people who we are privileged and blessed to have influence in their lives, our role in praying for those around us, those of you who are teachers or who have regular contact with young people, or old people, really anybody, right? Anybody who is a toddler crawling around a parking lot, you don't, you as a parent, you don't go over to your kid and say, "You're so stupid." Hopefully you don't do that. You shepherd and help your kids, right? You don't do it in an aggressive, nasty, angry, "You're so stupid. How could you be picking up a cigarette butt, you 6-month-old?" No, you gently take it from their hands. And you wipe their hands off. You get out the little wet wipe, and you wipe the, dirt off their hands, and you guide them into, something better. So that's, I don't mean to sound condescending, because I don't view it that way. I just view myself as being a little bit older and further down the road, because I'll be the first to admit that I have been in really dumb places in the past of my life. I've done really stupid things. I have just been involved in things that I look back on now and I can't even imagine or believe that I was ever there. And so for that reason, other people in that place can get where we are. They really can. And we need to have a little more kindness, a little more compassion, and really step into that mature sort of elder statesman isn't the word, like that not quite parental, but that mature role. View yourself as more mature, and you will not be looking down on people. You'll be wanting to help them. All right, coming up on a 3-day weekend. Hope you have a wonderful Labor Day. Thank you so much for listening to my show and being with me this hour. And God bless you all. All right, See you Monday or Tuesday. All right. God bless you. Bye-bye.